If you are interested in starting your own podcast, we use Buzzsprout because it is simple and easy to use. Buzzsprout can get your show listed on every major platform while giving you the resources for a great podcast website, audio players that can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening to your podcast, and tools to promote your episodes. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners, and that is why over 100,000 podcasters are already subscribed to Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. Following the link in our episode descriptions lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you. So in return, you will receive a $20 Amazon gift card from Buzzsprout while signing up for a paid plan. Most importantly, every subscription through our link is always appreciated and helps support our show so we can continue delivering the quality content that you guys listen to. That being said, back to the show.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Junkies. I'm Andrew.
This is Joe.
And with us, we have a very special guest, Ringo Award nominee, local writer Jason Douglas. Great to have you on.
Gentlemen,
Jason.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. And yeah, we're going to talk about your book. You were so gracious as to forward us a copy so we can check it out. Very good read, I'll say off the bat. We'll get into it a little bit more later, ask about, some stuff that, how you come up with it,
Sure.
everything going around that being a Ringo Award nominee. Like we said, Parallel. This is a special edition that we were able to read. Very good read. Pretty quick. Well, not too quick. But it was like very good pacing, I would say off the rip. How did you come up with the premise? There's a lot of things that people can, I think, empathize with and, kind of relate to. And,
Yeah.
So how did you come
thematically, and I'm sure we'll come back to this, but thematically, one of the things at its core is that existential dread of time passing and you deferring your dreams. And that was certainly something that, me being the age that I am, had been experiencing for lots and lots of years. I mean, I had this dream kind of simmering since I was probably about 12 years old of making a comic book, but just like, landed in the story, and just like a lot of people, most people in life, you set that aside because there's more practical things, the time, and you always have more time until you don't, right? So You've got that thematic premise simmering in my life for decades. The idea of, the sci-fi wrapping paper that goes around it, because I'm a comic book nerd, in my heart and for decades and decades, came from a conversation I had with a buddy of mine that I went to school with, and he actually teaches elsewhere in Michigan from me, and it was just a conversation about like a parallel version of you reaching out and the ramifications of that, and then that kind of fell into place. But neither of those things were enough to motivate me to take that scary big step about doing something, taking that leap and doing that thing and following your dream and kind of taking that leap, which is just a terrifying thing if you haven't taken the first step yet and you've literally put it off for decades. What lit the fire underneath my butt and what got me to sit down and for the first time in my life write a comic script was actually a conversation I had with a former student of mine who was literally in that age range of like the quarter life crisis. Like she was like pushing 30 herself, and I had in my classroom years and years and years ago, we were having this conversation about how it just dawned on her as she was approaching 30 how like it felt like she closed her eyes and a decade had just passed. Yeah. And like this dream of opening a dance studio in Chicago right out of college that she felt she had all the time in the world for, but made more practical, like I need to pay my rent tomorrow decisions at 22. And that time just melted away and was gone. And it was like baffling her. And it just popped in my brain. It was like the literal lightning strike, the proverbial light bulb. And those three things came together. My own, existential dread, the sci-fi wrapping paper that those themes can then get wrapped in, and then the fact that everybody goes through some version of this, right?
Definitely.
I came together and I sat down one summer, and instead of writing a one-act play, which was my usual thing that I did in the summer for the drama clubs that I ran at the elementary school level and the middle school level, wherever I was teaching at the time, I sat down and very much in a bubble, not with a plan in mind, certainly with a lot of irrational confidence and blissful ignorance of not knowing how you actually do this, I sat down and wrote the first half of Parallel, wrote that script. And, again, there's no publisher at this point, there's no artist, it's just a story that was burning inside that I had to tell and wanted to tell in a format that I think is the most malleable format out there, which is comics, and then specifically indie comics. And that's how it began.
Yeah, I feel like you can feel the passion on the page. Like this was a book that, when I'm more of a Marvel DC guy, like a superhero nerd.
Right.
But, it's been a little bit, it was nice to read, more an independent, not, super crazy, spandex and tights flying around book. And just sitting there reading through it is just, I really did, I related to this book, because like you said, like everyone goes through it, but you could really just feel the passion on the page that the world felt like lived in. It was really awesome to read.
I think the advantage of doing independent style comic books is that you can focus on the story as opposed to the characters themselves. But when reading the story, it reminded me of a time my fiance and I were driving around looking for antique stores, and we go into this kind of old style house type ordeal that we thought was an antique store, and it was a lady that collects and sells buttons only. And it almost felt like a I don't know, not like a prophecy, but the lady came up to us and told us, if you're gonna be successful in life at what you're passionate about and what you want to do it before you're 35, because that clock keeps ticking. And
the prophecy of the button house, I believe that should be
yes, it's a real thing. And unlike Landon, I mean, you're doing what you're passionate about, and I think that's so cool. So you kind of answered what I was going to ask, why comic books? So that being said, do you mostly work in the comic book medium, or do you do a lot of writing outside of comic books?
So my day job is a public school teacher. It has been for the last 23 years. So I had to promise myself that even though I'm taking a leap into the deep end and following this dream of mine, that you can't let it take away from my 3 kids, my wife, and this job of like, literally, not putting hyperbole on it, like shaping the youth of, that's what they're literally, the dream was always something in comics, but it was vague, like you don't know what that looks like when you're 12, and it's still a pipe dream at 18. And then you're an adult and you're doing these other things, and it doesn't necessarily just materialize even as a dream anymore. So I kind of like I honed my writing chops, whatever that they are. I came in through like the back door, because I was writing plays out of necessity because the drama clubs I was running had no budget. So that same kind of like blissful ignorance and irrational confidence was at the beginning of my playwriting career too, where I ran into this reality of, well, we don't have any money to go to one of these companies and buy one of these plays to put on. So I'll just write my own. How hard could it be? Little do you know that it's a massive thing. But I did that for long enough and was successful enough at that. And a couple of them got published by some of the big publishers and have been like performed in like 8 different states. And that's nice. Wonderful. But like you get good at something, and then like I could sit down and see stage direction in my head. And I'm not saying that the writing process isn't hard and a struggle, but I was good enough at that I had that irrational confidence when it came time to write the script, because I was like, well, again, so stupid. How hard can it be? How different can it be? And it's a massively different beast. The fact that this is fulfilling the lifelong dream, though, this is definitely my focus going forward, right? So like special edition, there's a whole bonus story that you guys didn't get to see in the PDF because it's not out there yet, and all the bonus pages. And like I got to write the bonus story of expanding the world in parallel. My next project, we're doing a Kickstarter in May. So like here going forward, yeah, my focus is on comics, because that's, as much as I love the stage, as much as I have loved writing and producing, skits and plays, this is what was here since I was a kid. You know what I mean? Yeah. And to have that dream come true and like live it out, even at this late stage, I'll tell you what, every single step in this process, the signing of the contract, right? The first sketches, preliminary art, the first completely inked page, the first page that had letters, the first variant cover, the first convention, like all these first, it was like being 12 again. It was such a thrill. And even going forward, I'm realizing, writing new scripts and telling new stories, and like the Kickstarter in May and then this special edition, it's like I'm still so new at it, even at my advanced age. Look at this gray on the sides. There's still so many firsts. It's like, it's just so invigorating. And I feel so, falsely young every single time something new comes up, and it's a blast going through it.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, especially the fact that, like you said, you're relatively new to it. I mean, not with your background and, enjoying comics, but, writing them actually, but especially just having like landmark success with, this books in specific and, being nominated for the Ringo Award. Like, how does that feel? I mean, that's like no small feat.
Well, dude, I gotta be honest with you. Like, when you're, the comic book industry, especially indie comics, there's no promises, there's no guarantees.
Right.
And outside of, maybe the big two, there's even less, right? And so there's no point in this process where I was like, oh, well, this is what will guarantee to come next, and this is what I should expect. But you can close your eyes when, once that script got picked up, like I can close my eyes and visualize that a page of completed art is coming in at some point, right? I can close my eyes and I know what it will be. I can visualize the idea that this page of my words will get lettered at some point. At no point in that process was there a dream, was there a thought, was there even just the tiniest little seed of an inkling of a hope that like 2 Ringo nominations, like get out of town. Like it was insane when that news came. I was on vacation and it like came through and I was like, look, you can probably tell even this early in the interview that I am not usually at a loss for words, right? Like I am verbose. I got to hold back when I write a script, right? I got to show a little more than tell. And, my day job is convincing 180 teenagers that grammar isn't boring. I need to be able to talk and say things. And when those nominations rolled, when that news hit me, when Travis McIntyre, who was a co-founder of SourcePoint Press and was editor-in-chief at the time, was like, hey, so you got nominated for 2 Ringos, best writer and best single issue or story. We should probably figure out a way to get you to Baltimore instead of going up to Traverse City for that other con. And I'm like, and it was literally 2 days of just, and like words wouldn't form. And because it was nowhere in my wildest dreams. So that, I mean, it was a major, amazing, mind-blowing way to kind of to end the first leg of my journey. We had just sold out the first run of the book. The nominations came through. I got to fly out to Baltimore and go to the award show and sell out a con exclusive book of Parallel there too. And then go to the award show and I get to give a speech and present 10 awards and then very gracefully lose to the dude who writes Batman in both categories because, famous and me. But it was a heck of an experience and certainly something I'll never forget.
No, the writing for Parallel was awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
That being said, how did you come up with the creative team for this?
So this is where we can kind of delve into the fact that the way this book came to fruition is about as atypical for how comics are produced in the 21st century as you can get. Okay. This was not a crowdfunded book. This was not a book where I worked on and finished before. It was very much sold and started almost like I was pitching. Travis said this to me when I walked up to him at a convention with half the script, with 32 pages in a manila envelope from my classroom, with like little colored paper clips from my classroom desk, and like handed him and said, "Here is this comic book I wrote." And he's like, "Are you trying to pitch me a comic in 1970? Do you understand that you are not even in the right century, much less the right decade?" And I was just, no, yes, I don't know. What do you, and he caught on with my enthusiasm wherever. He's like, "You're weird. I don't think you understand how this works, but I can like smell the passion dripping off you. I'm going to go home. I'm going to read this tonight. You come back to the convention tomorrow and we'll talk." And from that point on, like SourcePoint literally made this dream come true for me because they found me the artist. They found me the inker. They found me my editor, Bob Sally, who was a great writer in his own. And kind of ushered through that creative process at honest to goodness because of my ignorance and almost 12-year-old mentality of how it was done back in the early 90s. I probably wouldn't have been able to pull it off. And so they ushered that in. And then, now that I've got that foot in the door, now it's time to start producing things in a much more traditional or a more modern sense. So that's why I like Jane American. My second project will be on a Kickstarter in May, and then SourcePoint will publish it the much more typical way that comics are produced in this time. And my editor and I found our artist, and we've found our big name cover artist for the Kickstarter and that kind of thing, a much more traditional process. But Parallel itself, that first run was just not how comics are made anymore. And I got very, very lucky. And a bunch of things kind of came together at the right time and the right moment to make it what it is and put it out in the world and get me like here with you guys today.
I mean, the book is awesome. Like you mentioned, that next project is, you said, in May for Jane American. That's awesome. We do usually ask around a few times. So we've covered the book, which we loved. I mean, I had a great time reading it. I would recommend anybody, you know, who's listening, check it out. We have posts on our social. You can go to Jason's page as well if you want to find out more information on, you know, how to order, you know, when everything's dropping. That's a CBJ stamped and approved endorsement there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited because like the only thing that I got to send you guys, because, you know, this is early in the process, like it's in previews right now as we speak and when this drops, and like you can go order it through previews, you can go to your LCS and stuff like that. But like the one thing that you guys haven't got to see is the thing that I'm, you know, personally really excited for today, which is like the fact that the special edition, the fact that it, you know, because it had the success it did, the fact that SourcePoint was like, hey, let's put together like a fancier, more deluxe package for this. And in the same way that the original graphic novel, you know, you said it was a nice, clean and quick read, but also fairly densely packed and kind of suggest rereadability. Because like for me, like when I write, I think about like what I like about a good story. You know, it has its beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
It's got enough ambiguity where you go, I kind of want to go back and read it again, right? I like the idea because I've been a fan much longer than a creator. I love the idea of bang for your buck, right? So I've read enough director's cuts, special editions, deluxe editions, where the back matter and the new stuff is fine, right? But you kind of go, okay. Mm-hmm. And so when we put this together, they gave me a lot of control to basically build the bonus 50 pages on my own.
Nice.
And I wanted to make sure, exact same way with the original story, that you were getting bang for your buck. So like, you know, you're getting more story, right? We've got that's the thing I'm super excited about, the bonus story going back into the story of Parallel. And I call it a between the panels story, where you're literally seeing some of the scenes that you were like, what happened next after we go from this scene to that scene? And you get to pause and go back and get some more character development there and get some questions answered. So I'm really excited about that. I wrote an afterword that takes you through the whole process from conception to the Ringo Awards. There's annotated script pages and annotated concept art and a cover gallery with some of those wicked variant covers that are floating around on eBay out there for way too much money. So get the cover gallery instead. And I just really enjoyed that. And then I got to do this thing where, you know, I've even seen like the annotated pages, like in back matter, and thank you, Ed Brubaker, for the inspiration for good back matter. But like sometimes even the annotations are like really clinical and it doesn't really tell you much. And I found myself having to like edit myself because I was writing paragraph upon paragraph, just telling the story behind the page, not just like what's going on this page, but, oh yeah, I got to tell you guys that these couple of pages that I've got here above are this time where I was out on a date with my wife at this street fair and she went to a store and this idea hit me and I literally sat down on a street corner and guys were whipping Bag-O bags past my head and I had to scribble it down on a piece of paper from my back pocket, and that's where this scene comes from. And so I had a lot of fun putting together something that not only, you know, is bang for your buck if you're a first-time reader, but also would entice the people and the fans of the book on the first run to go, oh, this is totally worth going back again because there's so much here to dig into and to enrich my original experience.
Absolutely. Like our forte is obviously like superhero comics, but as soon as I finished reading it, I'm texting back and forth. I'm like, what do you think the ending meant? You know,
love that. I really love that.
We had to go back to the actual picture and kind of better understand exactly what happened.
So without, you know, anybody who's watching and listening and digging this conversation so far, we're not gonna give away too much, but like a lot of that was in the script, and then Adam Ferris drew that splash page at the end with those reflections on either side of our protagonist, and it allows you to go where you want to go. You know, over the original run, most people felt pretty positive about that last page, but there's some people out there who saw some darkness, and I think it says something about you as a reader, depending on which way you interpret that. And you know, it's completely up to you.
Yeah, it's a Rorschach test.
Yeah, for sure. But it's, I mean, somebody was asking me the other day, like that typical thing that you'll ask a writer, like, well, is there an answer? Do you know what actually happens? You know, how does he come through in the end? And I could say that, but like I was thinking, it's a lot like what I tell eighth graders about poetry, right? It's like even if the author had an intent, the author doesn't have a place once it's out of their hand, once it's out of their brain. It's up for interpretation. You can interpret that poem any way you want. And as long as you can back it up with textual evidence, your own personal opinion about it, you're just as right as even the author was. So I'm never going to sit there and tell somebody who read the book that it happened this way, it happened that way, it was all in his head, it actually happened. That's up to you to decide. And it says something about you too, which I think is kind of cool.
I like that interpretation of it though, like leaving it up to it. That's, some people really want to make sure like it's definitive. It's this way or that way, you're with me or against me. But the fact that you can kind of contextualize it as you will, I really, we were going, like you said, going back and forth, giving our opinions on it before we kind of landed on what we kind of think. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a great book. And, I kind of, as a CBJ first time guest, there's a few other questions we want to kind of ask you about your overall background. So it's something we kind of call our secret origins. So, when did you get into books? Like, how did you start collecting? Was it like a gift? Did you find them at the local store? Like, what do you like collecting? Do you collect? All of that. Like, let's give us a little bit of history on that.
I need to forewarn you. We're gonna have to be careful here. Okay. I know how to talk about my book. I know how to talk about my writing. I know how to talk about future projects. And I know also, as verbose as I can be, as I mentioned before, I know how to keep that within a time frame if we need to. Start getting into my nerddom, and we may be here for days. So you're going to cut me off when you're done, and that's enough. Okay, so I am the oldest kid in my family, and my parents were not cool. All right. They don't mind me saying that because it's true. Like literally, my mother had an offer of free tickets to go see the Beatles in 1965 at Olympia Stadium and said, no, I have to stay home and wash my hair. Very 1965 teenage girl thing to say, and a very poor decision. So I never had the person in my life. There was no dude down the street who was like, check this out. Okay. So I came to everything a little bit late.
Okay.
I came to my music late. I came to my comics late. I came to my baseball cards late. I came to all the things that like I became passionate about in media and stuff like that later than most. But once I got there, call it like high functioning OCD. But like if I was in, I was in.
I feel
and comics were no different, right? And I was probably about 12, to be honest with you. And this is right on the verge of that massive late 80s, early 90s, the bubble, where that first round of enhanced covers and gimmicky events, and Batman's back is broken and Superman is dead, and X-Men #1, and then Image comes along, and you got Valiant in there kind of underneath all that. And I, even from day one, I was kind of, and this is true today, as a reader collector, I'm split down the middle 50-50.
Nice.
Okay. I have a full passionate 50% of me who's like, anything by Neil Gaiman, give it to me. You know what I mean? Like I find my storytellers that I love, and it's about the story, and forget the covers and blah, blah, blah. And there's this equal 50% of me who's like, oh, I need my keys. Right.
Yes.
I collect. Give me that Wolverine die cut cover of Wolverine #50 with that yellow cardstock cover. Give it to me. Yes. And those two things have very nicely played nice over the last several decades. I did the you guys know the obligatory stepping away from comics like in your late teens thing. I did my obligatory 9-year hiatus and came back somewhere in like my mid-late 20s, and then dove in, and suddenly I've got more money than I did when I was 14, and was like riding my bike to the comic shop 5 miles away. But like as a kid, it was weird because here I am, getting that foil Marvel cover, right? Yeah. Getting that Wolverine die cut cover because of the cover. But at the same time, my pull list at my LCS was every single vintage Valiant book.
Oh,
because the art was more subdued than the Image thing. Now, was I saving up my dollars to get one of those Spawn #1s off the wall in the back? Yes, I was. But I also was reading that first run of Spawn and going, okay, it's all right. But like Barry Windsor Smith writing Archer and Armstrong was what I loved story-wise. Yeah. And so like I'm like reading and collecting for that passion at the same time as the more collector kind of part of me. And very eclectic, right? Like if you boil down to it, like was I a Batman, Spider-Man, and Wolverine guy? You better believe I was. And then if you came at me from a different angle, I was all about Sandman. And even at 12, 13 years old, are you ready for this? Sandman Mystery Theater, like literally noir mysteries, from the 1930s. Like, I like what 13-year-old is like, yeah, give me Sandman Mystery Theater. None of them besides me. And so like kind of that dichotomy all through my life and even up to this day. Like you go down to my basement and there's these two separate sections. You've got the shelves of the collections of my favorite writers and my favorite artists, right? The people that I just love because they're the best stories. And then you go in the back room and I got my long boxes of this comic I need to have that I'm never going to crack open because God forbid my nasty sausage fingers lower to half a grade. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, right.
Down to the sausage fingers, man.
I'm very self-aware. I'm very self-aware of that, like high functioning OCD, because like I'm the dude who, like with physical media, when VHS moved to DVD, I rebought everything, right? And I knew so the one thing that I've avoided pretty consistently is slabbing my books. I'm still like a raw guy.
Yes.
There's only two slabs in my house. And one was because my son, the only book he ever wanted to collect, because I think I pushed too hard when he was young. Like, oh, you
like
should
a
be
sports
into comics
dad.
like me. Like I pushed too hard and he pushed back and he's not like a major comic guy, but he's slowly putting together a run of Iron Man.
Nice.
And I found a fantastic deal on Iron Man 1, a 6.5.
Oh, shoot.
And so there's one slab in our house with that. And then this very, very beautiful 9.8 foil virgin variant cover of Parallel that the store that did the exclusive gifted me. And so those are the only two slabs in my house.
That's awesome.
In fact, one of my favorite books is an X-Men 94. And I bought it years ago in that window of time post CGC coming on the scene, like their first big splash, whatever year that was. And then there's that little gap of years where they were floundering and they were not the thing. Like slabs were not the thing that they are now.
Yeah.
And you could just find they weren't in bargain bins, but there wasn't a premium on them yet. It just wasn't the thing. And I grabbed a 7 X-Men 94, took it home, and immediately took a hammer to it and got it out of there. So
good on you.
Yeah. So I've just made sure because I know that if I get in a little, I will have to go in all the way. I'm self-aware enough to know that high functioner or not, I'm going to need everything slabbed. And come on, I am a teacher during my day job and an indie comic writer on the side. One pays you pennies and the other one pays you dimes. So slabs are not in my future, hopefully.
It presents nicer too, and you can have everything together, to your point. Like, unless you're gonna slab literally every single one of your books, like it just kind of feels good to keep them like chronologically organized and all together, and so on and so forth.
You are preaching to the choir. I love it.
Perfect. I guess my last question: how did you get exposed to us, comic book junkies?
Oh, you guys have got a reputation online. Like I heard about you. It was like because like sometimes. So I don't know if you guys know this, but like in the first run of the book, it kind of flopped on release. Partly because SourcePoint Press wasn't as big as they are now. Partly because first-time author and there's no entrenched name recognition in there.
Landon's wife was pretty mean too.
And then, hey, can I say, because my wife read the book for the first time, believe it or not, last night, and was like, hey, that's not, and I'm like, no, it's not.
Oh.
But I don't know if she believes me or not, but like she literally waited years to read it. So like I personally feel a lot of sympathy for Claire in the second half of the book, in a way that, I mean, she's almost a cliched villain in the first half. And I think it reads that way. I have a lot of sympathy for her in the half, but in the special edition, those bonus pages, I think you're going to have even more sympathy for her because so the book is this dark sci-fi twisted tale, right? And it kind of begs that question of you, like, what price would you pay for a second chance at all the dreams that you thought you left behind forever? And Landon, as that protagonist, as he's going through his struggles, as he's seeing the visions and hearing the voices and being offered this second chance, and it gets darker and more twisted and more sci-fi, and the physical and mental stakes for him keep increasing like a crescendo. Like and if you're not careful as a reader, you can be hyper focused on him and not see the chaos he leaves in his wake, which is another kind of universal theme that I think a lot of people, whether they want to relate to it or not, probably can.
Yeah.
And like these people that when you're going through your journey and kind of just like a hyper focused on whatever existential dread or anxiety or depression that you're going through, it's very tunnel vision. And it's very hard to see some of the damage you're doing in your wake. And she's, while presenting in his mind as like the creator of all his misery in the first half of the book, I mean, she's a victim of some of his self-centered choices in the second half of the book.
Yeah.
As is everybody else around him. So yeah, there's that. But anyway, back to the thing, the book flopped because it dropped literally in the middle of the pandemic. And I went and did, because I didn't know better, this blissful ignorance again, I went and did 75 interviews.
Oh my.
Over like the next 18 months. And that's what led to the sellout. Not because it was a big splash in previews that first time through or anything like that in the diamond order, pre-orders. And so like, I know how to go online and hunt and search for new pods to talk to. Yours came to me because like some of my fans and followers on Instagram were like, you've got to check out these dudes.
Oh,
so
really?
This one wasn't me. I mean, honestly, I probably would have gotten to you guys eventually, like as I work through this, and then definitely in May when I'm going to need the community's help, for the Kickstarter to let my passion project keep going.
Right.
You guys came to me because you guys have got fans out there too.
Sweet.
I very much appreciate the feedback. Proud to say that you're our first guest that we don't know personally. So
wild.
It's nice to actually meet you.
Yeah. Seconded.
Well, this is good then. Here we go. Now let's make the connection. Let's go. You guys are
Connected.
Connect.
No, I very much appreciate you coming on to our show.
My pleasure.
Any final thoughts?
I don't have too many final thoughts other than obviously, thank you so much for coming on. We do appreciate it. It was a fun talk. I mean, we could go all day really, but it looks like we're coming to a close here. I just want to make sure that, you just let everyone know, any links, social media, dates, anything important, anything you want to plug. I know we've mentioned them throughout, but if you want to give everybody like a little reminder at the end here,
sure.
Feel free.
First and foremost, Parallel Special Edition is in previews right now, and you can hit up your LCS and give them Jason Douglas, Source Point Press, Parallel Special Edition. You can give them the Diamond Order code, which is January JAN 23 1872, and they'll order it for you. You can actually go, the wonders of the 21st century, spoken like a true old guy. You can literally go to previewsworld.com and order the book there, and then click on your LCS so you avoid the shipping, and it goes right to your shop and you get it that way. I got my Kickstarter coming in May for my next project, Jane American, which is another passion project of mine, means a lot to me. It's a kind of inspired by my late grandmother and dedicated to all the young women who have come through my classroom the last 20 plus years that are still struggling with identity and societal pressures to be something that they're not. And the deep themes of that story are rooted in that. But honestly, come and follow me on Instagram. It's my only social media because I'm a public school teacher, and you play around with social media too much and you get in trouble. So it's my one and only. But here's the cool thing. I've been a fan, as I mentioned, much longer than I've been a creator. And big timing people is certainly not my jam at all. You've got questions, you've got comments, or whatever you want advice, you come and hit me up in my DMs and I will talk your ear off. You will be saying, I've got to go, I've got a life before I'm done talking. It'll never be one of the, I do not ghost fans ever. So it's J Douglas Wright at J Douglas Wrights on Instagram. Come follow me there. Buy Parallel. Check me out in May. The reality is, guys, I grew up on Marvel and DC as well. I still love the big two to this day. They still get some of my dollars. But indie comics, it's a different animal. When you spend your dollar on small press, right? That dollar goes so far. It stretches because you are literally putting food on table, clothes on backs, and keeping small companies, which are a lot more like families than they are like corporations. You're keeping them together and allowing them to continue to follow dreams and put good, worthy content out there in the world of the medium that most of us love the most.
Yeah, thank you for creating and being a part of what makes the medium so awesome.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the time.
And to everyone out there, you heard the man. Go check it out. Check out his socials. Hit him up. He'll talk to you about whatever you want to chat about. And go get that book. CBJ Pod on Instagram's our main hub as well. And yeah, if you guys are already familiar, rate and review. Do the same for him, anybody. And, that's really it. Thank you so much, Jason.
My pleasure.
All right. Take care.